Okay. So without further ado, I would like to invite, each of the presenters we have today to introduce themselves. And if you could just start by, telling us your name. We know you already from the flyer, but if you could just start by telling us your name, your current institution, as well as your position and area of research, and maybe a little about your academic journey, that would be really wonderful. So, special order, whoever is willing to go first, that would be great.
Okay, so let me start. So I am Linford Lamte, and I am an assistant teaching professor at the University of Washington, that is in Seattle, Pacific Northwest. And I have been teaching professional and technical communication and grant writing. So basically within the technical and professional communication area of study. So I'm more interested in digital writing, workplace writing, um, grants, nonprofits, as we'll say NGOs, communication writings, and so basically place it in at the center of the community-based writing, as well as some digital communication and writing. So that's we do for now.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, and we can move on to the next speaker.
I guess that is me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, great. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. I'm in the person of Festus Kobnaenu, and I'm currently a doctoral student at the University of sorry, I still have my previous school days at the University of Maryland College Park. I'm
Right.
studying towards my doctorate in higher education, student affairs and international education policy. I'm also a proud alumni of the University of Cape Coast, and yeah, I've been doing international education consulting for the past 6 years. My research interest lies within, STEM living learning communities, Black students in STEM and international education, access and success. So, but basically, that is what I do. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, for volunteering your time to join us today, Festus. I am just aware that Cornelius, who is one of our speakers, has joined us today. So, Cornelius, if you can hear me, could you unmute yourself? And I think it would be great for our speakers to, if nothing prevents you, to show your faces for us so we could see you. That would be really great. So, since Cornelius is with us, Cornelius, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, like Hirata said, my name is Cornelius Somkogole. Currently a master's student at Michigan Tech, but in the fall, I'll be joining Texas Tech quickly to start my PhD program. I'm a proud alumni of KNUST, and I read English and political studies there, and I'm happy to join you all here. In terms of research interests, my research interest lies within the field of technical communication, specifically genres within technical communication that has to do with insurance claims processing. So if you have any interest in those areas, I'm the go-to guy for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So you would realize that we do not have one of our speakers joining us today who is in the person of Emanuela, and that is because she has to attend to some medical issues, so she's not going to be able to join us today. But we she was basically going to talk about issues in relation to funding. But yeah, I'll go ahead and then present some housekeeping information before we go ahead. But before that, my name is Samuel, and I'll be, as you know, already moderating the session for today. So just a brief housekeeping. I'll start with the order of today's presentation. Um, so. We will first start with an overview of the US graduates, school application process to ensure that everyone has a common understanding of the application process. Our assumption is that, and just as the data we collected, indicated, there are some people joining us today who have never tried, applying to school in the US or in North America before. So the purpose of, that's part of the session today is just to give a broad overview to folks who might be um, trying to apply for the first time. And our presenter, Festus, is going to help us to do that. So he's going to be the first speaker for today. And from there, we will move into presentation on what, English departments look for in competitive applicants, to give you a sense of what admission committees are interested in when they are evaluating application materials. And in relation to that, Dr. Linford Lamte will help us, to understand that because he has had some experience sitting on real or actual admission committee before. So he has the experience and knowledge to share that with us from his perspective. And our final presentation for today would be on writing statements of purpose, which is a very brief genre of writing, but quite difficult to write. And then, as part of that, there will be something in relation to funding, which Emanuela was originally supposed to have help us to understand. But since she's not here with us, we have combined that with, information on writing statements of purpose. And Cornelius will help us to understand that. So he'll be the last, but not the least, speaker for today. So after all the three presentations, we will have, and I should say that each speaker will have just about 15 to 20 minutes to present what they have to share with us today. The original plan is to make it participant-centered. So we hope that after they have presented, what they share would be really insightful, but might not answer all the all the things that you hope to hear. And so through your own questions, we hope that it will elicit, the kind of information that you need, to help you as you prepare to apply to graduate schools. Um, so yeah, and that will be through the questions and answers session. So the Q&A session have been enabled. So as the presentation is going on, you can, enable that feature on your phone or your laptop, whatever device you are using to join, to just drop your question there or just post your question there. And after the three presentations, we'll read them, but you're also welcome to unmute yourself after the presentations to ask your question. And finally, today's webinar is being recorded, as you may have seen, and then it will be posted on our YouTube channel. I will send the link to everyone who registered for this webinar today so that you can, always go back there and then visit the information and then just watch it for whatever you needed to hear. So thank you once again for being here, and I hope that you find this webinar very informative and inspiring. So let's get started with our first speaker for today, who is Festus. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think before we start the normal stuff we do back home, on behalf of the leadership led by Dr. Agbozo and the amazing team, I want to appreciate all of you for the opportunity, to invite me to share my experience and also to inspire other scholars who want to join us in the coming semesters. Do I have the opportunity to share my screen? I
Yes,
don't know.
right.
Okay,
So I made every presenter co-host just so you can
great,
share your screen. So that's really possible.
great. Yeah, so my slides are very, I don't know if it's simple, but uh, okay, let me turn this off. Can you all see?
Yes.
Okay. And so basically, I've been given a task to help us understand the US education system a bit and also grad school process a bit. So basically, to this roadmap that we are all going to go through, we are trying to understand US graduate school application process, application timeline, funding opportunities, and then choosing the right university, right, which is a very big topic that we cannot use just 15 minutes to go through, but we can try. And then looking at some resources and common mistakes for us to avoid. And then I'll leave the team with my final words. And so basically, when we talk about what makes a US grad school application, we all know that if you have your passport, by all means, you cannot travel to US without a passport. But these are basically the other documents that in most institutions that you may be able to use your academic transcript, your GPA, which is within, your academic transcript, your statement of purpose, which might change depending on the institution that you're applying to. It can be statement of intent, personal statement, academic essay, depend on which institution that you're applying to, your curriculum vitae, and then also your resume. And letters of recommendation, English proficiency if required for your program. And some programs will request for writing samples and portfolio, which is basically depending on the program you're applying for. I think majority of the English programs I know will require for something like that. And some programs also require you to interview before an admission coordinator or a faculty member to understand why you chose their program and then also your career plans and what you can bring to the department. So this becomes a very simple structure that we need to start planning our minds on what we have to do in terms of grad school applications. Now, the next thing I'm going to go through is the timeline, right? The timelines are very, very, very crucial. I remember when Samuel asked me to talk about this, I'm like, oh, when was it the best time for us to have this? Somewhere January. Somewhere January. Yeah, so for my experiences for the past 6 years, I always advise that we start this journey early, at least 12 months, where you begin to explore programs and also their research on faculty members that you want to look at. If you are beginning this one from the 9th to the 12th month, that is the time that you need to prepare your CV, your essays, and any form of exams that you need to write. If you have to write any English proficiency exams or a GRE, that is the timeline that you have to use to be able to prepare for this journey. And so sometimes, getting letters from faculty members are also very, very crucial. Sometimes you reach out to a supervisor or a faculty member, and they'll be like they are very busy and they have also personal life that they are navigating. But then if you are here, you still have time. Within the 6 months, you can actually gather all this information and start putting in. So request for your letters of recommendation, submitting to applications, and also funding documents, because some of the schools have their funding considerations when you submit on the priority consideration period. So for instance, if you're applying to a school and then their timeline is that submit by December 15th, if you meet the December 15th deadline, you are considered for priority funding consideration. But then the scope is that if you are beginning this August, September, October, November, December is 5 months. Now from January, if you're applying for four semester 2027, January, February, March, April, May, it's also 5, which is 10. So it's still enough time for you to complete the whole process, getting your admission, processing your visa, getting your I-20, looking for housing, and then planning for your travel. It's all included in these 10 months that I just gave. And so the timelines actually differ from various institutions. I'm still on the timeline. For 4 semesters, 2027, basically admissions will begin, and also with spring semester, which is for the January admission and also enrollment period. It means that you have to start putting your application from starting 15th of August going. Majority of the US graduate schools will open the application portals from 15th August down to November. Sometimes it ends there for those who want to come in the spring semester, those that start classes in January. And so you need to prepare for that if you are applying for spring. Now, if you're applying for summer, it's just like doing the summer one with the fall semester. So summer classes starts in May. So you should have reported to your school within the month of May, and then you start with your enrollment and then other processes that you have to do. We have the fall semester, which begins mostly in August, depending on the institution that you are. Let's say if you have a graduate assistantship that you have to come for training, some of the institutions might also ask you to come in July. And so basically the fall semester runs from that time to December. And so majority of us are moving into the fall semester from August to December is the fall semester for us. but then by then you should be prepared to arrive in the state. And then for the spring semester, January to somewhere May is mostly the deadline for academic work. Summer begins from May somewhere to June or July to August, depend on the institution that you find yourself in. So if you're applying for fall, summer, or spring, this is how you have to know. I'm yet to see an institution that actually admits international students for winter. Winter is basically December to January, that period where we are resting. People also take classes there, but majority of the graduate programs don't give admissions during that time. And so these are the various timelines you need to know. In terms of other funding opportunities that I've been asked to talk about, there are a lot of funding opportunities. I want to start from the bottom, right? So one of the key things I always champion is that always prioritize fully funded offers when possible. I'm saying this because I am Antiba, like anyone that knows Antiba. Like I grew up in a family where you have to, fend yourself, you have to look for money. Pursue your educational dreams by taking money from your pockets and other stuff. And so looking at me coming to University of Massachusetts Amherst for my master's degree, where I'm supposed to pay $72,000 each academic year, where am I going to pick that money from, right? There's no one to help. And so if you are beginning this journey for the very first time, I want to today encourage you to focus on getting fully funded offers. Now, how do you earn some fully funded offers? These are some of them, either through graduate assistantships. So graduate assistantship can be teaching. So you are supporting a faculty member in tutoring a class, teaching students, answering student questions. It can also be a research. You are serving as a research assistant or a research associate to the department or the faculty member. It can also be administrative, right? So you are also working administratively, helping. You can be the department graduate assistant, where you are supporting with enrollment, like some of these things that we are doing. You'll be managing informational sessions and answering emails for the department, organizing programs for the department. The other ways that you can also sort for some fully funded offers are university fellowships, which are very, very competitive, right? And so if you're applying for like humanities, like my program, and then for English, you need to come with a very strong profile, a profile that would set you up for university fellowships. Most often I hear people say that you need to come from the STEM program before you can be awarded a university fellowship. That is a very big lie. I'm a living testimony of 4 doctoral funded university fellowships from 4 solid institutions in the United States. And my program is not a STEM-based program. And so how do you go about it? Everything that they are teaching you guys throughout this class, this session, from your CV, from your transcript, from your SOP writing and other stuff would come together to support that university fellowships. The merit scholarships are, scholarships that basically you merit it, right? Let's say an institution is telling you their cutoff, their GPA requirement is 3.0 and you have 3.5, you meet other criteria. They say that, oh, okay, fine. We have a merit-based scholarship of $10,000 to give it to you. So basically that one, you merit it, you don't do anything for it. Some of the university fellowships I mentioned to you, not do anything for it, right? So like some of them gave me like 2 years where I'm working as a TA or a research assistant, and then the other 2 years I'm not doing anything. You are basically being paid by the institution. So that is what the fellowships work. Some you work for it, some you not work for it. Merit-based scholarships, you don't work for them at all. You just merit it based on your academic achievements and the other things that make your application more complete. And then there are what we call departmental awards. Now, departmental awards can either come straight from a faculty member or from the department, right? And these are sometimes very huge. It can cover your full tuition. Let's say a professor has won a national grant and they are researching on something. They can just, bring you on board in a form of a research assistantship, and then they will pay you from that. Some of the departmental awards can be tuition waivers. It can also be scholarships and all that. And so whilst you are exploring the schools, you are exploring some of these and asking some of these questions as well. And then there are external scholarships. I've had people, even in my school, my previous institution, who came from Fulbright scholarship. I think that's one of the major things that majority of us do, especially when we are coming from home. But then these are other external scholarships you can look through. There are MasterCard scholarships you can also explore. When you go on the university website, they may also have a website that has all the external scholarship links. You can explore some of them to be able to see where you can get some form of assistance in terms of funding from. Now, how do we understand US universities? This is it's very dear to my heart because it's basically my field. Majority of us come into institutions where we earn some PhD, masters, or our degrees, or even certificates, and those certificates wouldn't even be valid in Ghana. I've seen a post on LinkedIn like that where one lady got a PhD from the state, and not knowing the institution is not recognized. For me, I always talk about the fact that if you are applying to schools, use the US News and World Report ranking to be able to see where the institutions are, right? Now, US institutions can be categorized into different sections, right? We have public. Now, public institutions are set up by, they get grants and awards and funding from the federal government. So they are state-owned institutions. It can be, flagship. So flagship institutions can be the state of Massachusetts, like my school, University of Massachusetts Amherst, is a flagship institution for the state of Massachusetts. So that's the number one public university for the state of Massachusetts. And there are other institutions that comes under. The other thing you can also say is that some of them are state systems, right? For instance, when you go to the California system, California has a whole system of schools. So they come together and then they have one flagship campus, but then there are other campuses. Just as we have in Ghana, where Legon Tech, they have the other campuses across the regions. That is how the state systems also work. So they have one flagship campus and a lot of other campuses all over. We have the SUNY system, which is State University of New York. We have the Texas system. So University of Texas system, you see Texas Tech, Texas A&M system. So a lot of them. So if you're interested in looking at some of the system schools, you can also look there. There are a lot of opportunities that come from there. For instance, if you graduate from the SUNY system, right, State University of New York, you become part of the alumni system of that institution, right? So from where I'm moving to, it's a state institution, University of Maryland. College Park is the flagship campus, but then there are other campuses that comes within that. So if you become a graduate of that system, you join a very strong alumni network. So those are some of the other stuff. And also even in terms of funding, it also works there. And then there are regional institutions and regional universities and colleges. Some of these are regionally accredited, and they are also more of regionally funded and well respected. They can either fall within the R1 institution, which is research intensive ranking. They rank them in that way, or the R2. Some of them are also teaching focused. There are some regional or even state systems institutions that are teaching focused institutions. There are also land grant institutions. I just don't want to spend my time here, but hopefully you'll be able to read more into some of these to understand what land grant institution means. So these are institutions that the state actually granted them the land for them to operate, right? And so some of them receive federal funding, and some of them become even state flagship. We have private on for-profit institutions. The one thing that I don't want majority of us to focus on is the for-profit institutions. For-profit institutions becomes the institution that will give you 5,000 scholarship, and then your remaining deficit or remaining fund that you are supposed to pay will be hitting around $65,000. And so whilst you are exploring schools, some of the schools also are private, so we can actually fund you. Some are Ivies, some are non-Ivies, but they are research 1 and research 2 institutions across the US. One of the other schools that we haven't explored much is the historical Black colleges and universities. Now, HBCUs are the institutions that were funded either federally or formed out of the Black population. When you look at those institutions, majority of the students there are Black students. So it's just an identity affirming institutions, right? That some people decide to attend those institutions. Like, for instance, Morgan State University is a historical Black college. university, historically black university. I mean, Spelman College is also one of them. So those are some of the other top ones you can see. And then the other ones is we have other minority serving institutions like Hispanic serving institutions, which is HSI, the other military or kind of professional based institutions that also exist. So if you are coming for US Armed Forces and other stuff, maybe that's what you want to learn. You can look at military based institutions. Those are some of the areas you can also look into. Most of the programs here do offer, I mean, masters and also doctoral universities and colleges, right? There can be a college like, I mean, Spelman College or Williams College, but the fact that they are having the name college doesn't mean they don't offer any master's program in English. Some of those programs, some of those schools are even looking for teaching assistants for them to come and teach undergraduate classes. So when you are looking at schools and you think that, oh, you just want to look at universities, you don't want to look at colleges, you are doing yourself a very big, I mean, issue. Look at those schools because you can get funding there. I currently have someone coming to one of the female affirming institutions here in Massachusetts and got fully funded offer, including where she'll be staying and other stuff. So you can also look at those ones as well. Now, when you are looking at program first, the first thing I want to direct you is US News and World Report ranking or the World Report ranking. Just go there and type in, create an account, search for your program English, and then you'll be able to see how they have been ranking them according to teaching, according to research impact, according to student, how do you call it, evaluations and all that. So you'll be able to find out some of those rankings from those two platforms that I've mentioned. Another platform I will recommend is niche.com, niche.com. Now, niche.com also have its own way of evaluating institutions based on academic programs. And so for English, you can actually use niche.com to also see how they've been doing their rankings. Now, before I move on to the next slide, one thing I want to point out is that, brethren, don't be afraid to apply to top institutions. I always say this whenever I'm talking to prospective applicants, because why? We are weighing our options. Be like, okay, let me apply to University of New Haven, which is one of the universities I don't like at all. Because I mean, my GPA is 3.5, and so I don't think I can get into Harvard. I don't think I can get into Yale. I don't think I can get into Texas Tech, Texas A&M. No, those institutions are equally institutions that you meet their admission criteria. And whenever I'm talking to people, I want to encourage them. I graduated from University of Cape Coast with a second class upper, but I got admission into Yale and Brown University and then ended up denying their offers. So don't look down on your academic potentials, right? Don't let anyone say that, oh, if you're applying to this institution, you don't have the requirements, you don't meet the admission requirement. Do that. I got in with a second class upper to, I mean, Brown and then Yale University. You can also do same. So don't be discriminative when you are searching for some of those schools. And then the next thing I'm going to talk about, which I think basically someone who's taking this part, is basically make sure of all these things. It is important that you build a very strong application. I mean, it starts from you maintaining your grades. Now you have your GPA. If you are here in level 300 or 400 listening to us, this is an opportunity for you to continue building your GPA. You need to also start exploring research experiences. And whenever I say this, I go back to Ghana where we had no much experiences in research. But I want to tell you that professors are all over our LinkedIn looking for people to serve as research assistants or even volunteer for them to support their teaching and research. Build some of those things. If you have the opportunity to publish with Sami, do that. I mean, if you have the opportunity to present somewhere, do that. If you have presented some of these things, have all this information there. Build your leadership and community engagement. They are equally important because graduate school goes beyond just your GPA. And I'm a living testimony of that. And also build strong relationship for strong recommendation letters. You know, one of the key things that can actually make a 4.0 applicant not get admission and funding is letters of recommendation. A majority of the letters of recommendation that I have been there before, coming especially from most faculty members back home, are just one single paragraph with a very simple thing. This student was in my class and all that. People write recommendation letters just beyond 1 page and even 2 pages, right? And so we want to make sure that the person recommending you is someone that can actually write something meaningful, something good that suits the department and the school you are applying to. And then also make sure you define your research interest. Defining your research interest doesn't mean, oh, Professor Samuel, I want to come and work with you. My research interest is looking at literature in Ghanaian high school. Meanwhile, maybe Professor Samuel hasn't even traveled to Africa before. What am I trying to say? You don't impose your research interest on professors. You tap into professors' research interest and you try to build on yours, right? Most often, we even propose some applicants fail to do this. They propose topics that I want to research on this. As a graduate student, you don't have any kind of research focus because you'll be taking graduate level classes, and through that you'll be groomed. And then from there, even one class can change your whole research trajectory throughout your journey in academia. So make sure you are building your interest around what faculty members are doing so that you'll be able to sort for some opportunities from their labs. Now, where to find programs? University websites, US News and World Report. I've mentioned that. You can use niche.com to also search for those programs. One of the best strategies I use is faculty's profile. So when I go to the University of Florida English department, I look at the faculty members, their research. I'm not only looking at where they are researching at, I'm looking at where they are coming from. So sometimes you see, oh, they pursued a PhD or a master's from this institution. That is another way for you to look for programs across the United States. Sometimes too, when you go on their Google Scholar, you will see the other faculty members that they are researching with. Majority of them are actually within their field and they are saturated across various graduate programs across the United States. You can use that strategy to identify various universities and programs that fit your research interest. Other platforms like Peterson and Profellow is a very good one. And those of you who are looking for PhD, I utilize this platform a lot and it was very helpful, which is Find a PhD. Find a PhD will be able to help you sort out some graduate programs, especially for English and any literature, based programs. Another strategy is LinkedIn and then academic networks. Today, there are 52 students in this meeting, I guess. We are having what we call an academic network. Sami is pursuing a different program somewhere. Cornelius is also pursuing a different program somewhere. This is how you can start searching for, oh, where is Sami? Do they have any program in there? What program is Sami pursuing? When you go on their LinkedIn, people post about attending conferences, they are presenting papers and other stuff. Look at where all these students are coming from, right? That will be able to help you to also identify some graduate programs. There are also what we call professional-based associations. And those of you who know me, I have a very good resource that I can share with you guys right after my talk. It has all the list of professional-based associations across the world. I mean, across the world. So when you are in Europe, you can actually find some of those associations in Europe. If you're applying to USA, you see all the associations in English and TESOL, all of them listed in that resource. You just click on the link, it takes you there. And some of them have what we call program directory. So program directory means that these are programs that they have approved them. So let's say you're applying for social work. Now, if you're applying for social work, just go to American Society of Social Workers. They have all the programs they have, approved them, and then you can be able to look through. So I'll be able to share the ones that I have for also English related ones so that you guys can go to their website, see there. And some of them actually have scholarships and funding opportunities listed on their website where you can actually apply for as a graduate student. So you can look into that. I've already mentioned current graduate students and also utilize alumni who are coming from all those programs and institutions. Those are equally helpful to your journey. Now, to talk about the common mistakes
Sorry
that
to
have been touched.
interrupt, but you have 4 minutes
I have 4 minutes.
to wrap
Good.
up. Yeah.
So let me wrap up quick. Don't apply late. Ladies and gentlemen, admissions are opening this August. Don't apply late. Forget about having ChatGPT write a very generic SOP for you, where is statement of purpose. Generic SOPs, you just go and copy someone's SOP. That is not a true representation of you. Forget that one. Ignoring faculty fit. If you find that you are a very good fit for this faculty member's research, don't ignore it. Pursue it. It will be able to help you. Please and please again, the weak recommendation letters, run away from them. The person that is writing for you, make sure they know you and they'll be able to write something good. Proofread, proofread, proofread. Proofread, proofread, proofread. Let someone look through your application for you before you submit. And also applying only based on rankings, right? Some people like, oh, if they don't fall within the top 50 schools in the US, I am not applying. That's a very big mistake that you'll be doing. Make sure you are looking at various sections according to the rankings and how the program will be able to prepare you towards your career. And then my final advice basically comes from what I mentioned. Start early, research deeply, focus on fit, funding, and then faculty alignment, and also in all your application materials, tell your authentic story. They are equally important. These people want to hear your stories. And guess what? Rejections are part of the journey. So do persist whilst the rejections do come. And equally, some of us, we are available whenever you have questions for us to be able to assist you. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate all of you. You can reach out to me through these contact details.
Okay, thank you so much, Festus, for your presentation. You shared a lot of insightful information. And moving on to our next presentation, we would like to invite Dr. Linford Lamte to go ahead with the next presentation.
Okay, just a moment. Let me share my screen. Uh,
Yeah, so while you try to share your screen, I think that there was a little miscommunication in terms of the time. So instead of 6, PM GMT, what was communicated was 7. So it's likely that a lot of people are now going to join, and now that it's almost 7 p.m. So what it means is that um, many people who are going to join later will not, I hope, miss a lot. Yeah, so that we can get a lot of time to, have all the speakers speak and present today. So yeah.
okay. Okay. So is my screen share okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
it's
I
my
can see. I don't know if everyone can also see.
uh probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like we all can see the screen. So thank you very much, Festus. You really said most of the things I would like to share. So I'll take it from a different angle and maybe get into more nuances in that one. So I will be speaking based of my experience on admission committees and with the English program. And basically, most of what I'll speak will pan towards rhetoric and composition, technical communication materials, more than literature. But it's the same thing that will apply. So go and then welcome to preparing for application in English studies or in writing. Yeah. Okay. Um, oh, is my screen? Oh, okay. Can I see background? Oh, I don't know if you could see my screen. Can I see?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Yes,
So,
please. Your
okay,
screen.
okay, thank you. So There are so many areas when it comes to English studies, and especially in rhetoric composition. Now, we have writing studies, we have technical and communication studies, we have composition theory, we have multilingual writing, information design. I'm bringing this up because from what I see from some of us coming from Africa, we have very limited understanding of English. And so we tend to focus more um, on writing and more grammar focused applications. But then there's so many areas you could go with. So you think about technical and professional communication. We look at workplace writing. Cornelius mentioned about insurance and technical document that he'll be talking about. Think about AI, digital writing. Do some of you compose on your phones, your text messages. These are all areas you could research into. You could look at how businesses communicate. How, for example, the letters you receive from a bank or you receive text message from a bank about some transactions. These are areas in English we focus on. So the areas are very, very broad. So do not really focus um, um, much on just grammar and other limited area, but there's so many areas you could focus on: writing, literacy, technical and communication. And then, um, oh, okay. And somewhere could you, my screen is stuck. I don't know if
Oh,
you,
okay. Uh, no problem. But we can still see it, or at least I can still see it.
yeah, I was trying
So
to move to the next screen, but it's stuck. So there's so many areas you could focus on. I don't know why. I cannot.
okay, so what I can do is to revoke your
Okay,
co-host status, and then I can try to, assign
okay,
you that status again while you try to fix it. If in case it's from your computer, then you can try sharing it again. That should work. I hope so.
okay.
Yeah, I just did that. So you can try sharing again.
I can try. Okay. Mhm. Safari, all background. And okay, yeah. So I think it's working. Thank you so much for that. So as I was saying, and
But
then we have the
look, so we
oh,
can see it. However, I think it's just a rectangular space. We cannot see
oh,
the full thing. Yeah.
okay, let me stop sharing. Well, and then come back. Okay, wait. Um, content only. I go here, doesn't allow me to. Hmm. Oh shit. Let me see.
Prof,
Yeah.
why don't you share with Samuel and
Okay.
then he
Maybe
operates whilst again, I think it's from your end.
maybe I'll share.
Even this, yeah, Google Doc, you can maybe send me the link on WhatsApp and I can open it.
Let me- I can even put it there.
Like, yeah.
Mhm. I'm able to share from here. Hmm. So someone shared with you in the chat.
Okay.
So I would really like you to see the slide.
Yeah.
So basically, okay, while it tries to do that, let me just keep talking. And then, so we also have areas such as writing program administration. You have literacy sponsorship. You can do research areas in terms of how you studied reading and writing. What kind of areas supported you? Did you Were you used to going to the cafe, internet cafe? Were you used to going to extra classes? What kind of like processes we study kind of thing. So just to bring your attention that there's so much we could do, even the public rhetoric in kind of like political spaces. What kind of political spaces do we have in Ghana?
Yeah,
And
no, yeah, so I have the link, but I don't have access to, the file. So if you could provide access.
okay. Okay, so you should have it.
Okay, I just hope that you can see my screen now.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So you could see that so if you go to the yeah, you could see there's let's go to the previous one. So you could see there's feminist rhetoric, there's environmental studies, we have galamsey in Ghana, mining. There's always language and reporting around it. And so this is just to give you an idea of how you could start thinking about your application process. We all know about Kinte. We all know about Akwaba. We don't know those are all language issues. So when you study of English, you're taking our it could go into fashion, it could go into other things, but we're looking at even color and our use of color. They are all language speaking things. So it helps us to think about how we can reframe and position ourselves so that we get admission into English programs. And so if you look at the next slide, we'll see that there are four key areas that I see that inform the admission process, at least based on what I've seen so far. So they look at the diversity of applicants and the perspective they bring, and that's just what I said previously. So if everybody is looking about, I want to look at noun-verb agreements, I want to look at syntax, I want to look at it doesn't really work. So these four, so when they have a wide pool, it helps a program to develop. So we have different people doing so many things. So think about language and English studies beyond words. So numbers could even form about this, like I said, fashion, color, but how language is shaping our communities and societies. And so that gives you a range of research interests that could help people think about working with you and accepting you in the program. And then also, first also make mention of this. Think about how your program aligns with your application aligns with faculty expertise. They cannot most of the time admit you if you are doing something or you want to do something that nobody is interested in the program or no faculty is happen to have interest in it. You do not have to have exact research interests as the faculty members, but you could align yours with them and then open it up. So you could think about broad areas. So you could think about like, environmental ready kind of things. You could think about writing program administration, and then you may go a different direction from what they go, but then it falls under a very particular area. So your department may not have anybody doing galamsey or mining and other things, but then you're looking at the environmental degradation effect. It all falls under environment, and then you could pitch your application in that direction. So when you apply, have this in mind that do not limit yourself to what you kind of like English means that I have to do words and I have to analyze a particular sentence structure. You can have broad goals and then topics. And then the department might have the capacity because they have a commitment to ethics of care to make sure that they are not admitting you and they don't have anybody to support you. So something that to think about is that you are not going to impose your research ideas, but they will be able to support you. So when you go through a list of faculty research areas and what they do, the programs they attend, the conferences they attend, or a little bit about their CV, you'll be able to get an idea of whether you could be mentored um, in the program. And so with the next slide, we see that your program, your application must have a story. I mean, must have a story. And then the story talks about your experiences. So you bring your experiences into the whole application thing. You have a story in terms of the kind of school you have attended that is more related to your coursework. What kind of um, coursework classes have you taken? Have you had a teaching experience? Have you been tutoring? Yeah, tutoring is more related like a one-on-one or small group kind of all things. Maybe some of you have done some extra classes or studies or remedial classes teachers. And then you have like a bit of research. Have you attended colloquia or colloquium? And then we have some sort of presentation. It mightn't be really be some very formal presentations, some very informal presentations, even it's important. But then what admission committee is looking at it is that it is not just about the experience, but what did you learn? What do they mean? So the story calls upon you to not just to narrate, but to tell us what you learned from it and what connections you could make out of those things. So your experiences matter, and you must bring your experiences together. I quite remember my time I applied for Michigan Tech, and I was talking about how I was always buying Walkmans and breaking them down and seeing how the forward is moving forward and replaying forward button and then replay button. So you could see that those kind of things will connect you to how then I'm interested in technology issues and how sound. Uh, so that's kind of all things. And then we see examples in the next slide of how see. So instead of writing, for example, something like, oh, I've been tutoring multilingual writers and I've been working at a writing center. And so I've had a very good experience in tutoring. So I'm a very experienced teacher. Everybody can say that. But when you're applying, you want to think about like what are the implications of that? So probably while tutoring, you came to understanding that there is a gap. There is some struggle that students are going through, or even the teaching or the materials being used. So probably realize that okay, the students needed certain things about the technology they were using to compose was hindering them. So you want to research further. So I put this through my work with multilingual writers, I've become interested in how language expectations shape students. So you begin to now think about your research ideas in this way. Then they know that your research is not coming from vacuum. You are not just writing generic statements. You are building upon your own experience and you want to continue growing as a learner. And that's what graduate student is about. You will have to think about your experience and reflect on what it means to the program. So if you work in adult literacy program, some people did like distance education and other things in Ghana, then you realize that, oh, okay, probably people in distance education, maybe the older people, were having certain cultural limitations. So you want to now come to the English program and see how we could support this program that literacy could be taught in different ways than we know. So you could see that there are so many ways you could think about your application. It needs a story, but just not a story. You have to reflect. You have to make the connections. You have to make the admission committee understand where it came from, how you're mapping it, and what you want to learn and what you want to do with it. So that is that. And then, so that is the story. And this story mostly is in the statements, this is in the statements of purpose. And so when we go to the next slide, we see that your statement of purpose should do something like at the end of the day, tell the people who you are, which comes back to your experience, what you care about. So you might care about multilingual writers, you might care about adult literacy learning, what you care about. And you must demonstrate that here is how I think I can work together with the program and the faculty, kind of thing. So to do this, there are four main ways, which I've seen that the best, those who were awarded admissions had this in them. So a strong sense of the conversations they are entering into. So if you are like multilingual, right, kind of thing. So they kind of know what has been happening in multilingual, or they've done some one or two research are reading about it and know what multilingual writing is about. And then um, what kind of it's motivating them. So it could be political, kind of like maybe some people are seeking asylum, being persecuted. It could be even the way the education ministry goes about designing curriculum for them. That could be it could be some ethical things that nobody's aware of, a combination of these factors. So you are thinking critically. That's how you are not just narrating your experience, but you are mapping out into the motive that is helping you to apply for this. So but just in a way show some familiarity with understanding of what the people in the field are doing or what people are talking about. A little bit understanding about a little understanding of that will help you get the kind of things. So then we get into one thing to that helps one get into English program. There is always a demand for writing sample. There is always a demand for writing sample. And for some of us in Africa, we might struggle with this a little bit because we are used to writing exams at the end of the semester, and then we are good to go, we are done. So just come, write your exams, and you're good to then you forget about everything. So hardly do we engage in research. How do we engage in research projects? And so we struggle with the writing sample, but they may ask, and depending on the school, some may ask you to write to have some which is not less than 20 pages, double space probably, not less than 20 pages can also. So I was fortunate enough to have done a combined major, and I have a chapter in a thesis, so I could find things. But if you are in Ghana or you are in somewhere, think about how you come up with a writing sample. Could you show the next slide with with the writing sample? Oh, okay. So yeah. So just a little yeah, okay. So writing sample, which shows a way of like in the writing sample, sometimes it may not really be connected to the program. But what the admission committee is looking at is that you are able to do close reading. Because once you apply, remember that it is grad school. In grad school, you are basically more like independent researcher. Your life is about researching and you're doing independent research. So they want to understand whether you can do close reading. By close reading, I mean that you can read into details and um, understand what is being said. Then also, if you can engage with ideas in the field and like citing people and building upon people's ideas, and then also having a clear line of argument. How do you have they could see that it's a way to tell the admission community that you are kind of well organized. You have had some prior training, like undergrad has trained you to a point where you could hold conversations. Because when you come to grad school, it's more like conversation. You go to class and there's a lot of discussions in this program. So you read and come to class. You want to see whether you can read closely, you can see gaps in the reading, you can engage with the line of thinking, like methods and how you can spot gaps and other things. So thinking about that, you have a writing sample. Sometimes you might have to refine your own writing sample before, because sometimes at the time you're writing it, you were in an undergrad, and so, but you may want to a little bit refine it to show that you understand what it means to write kind of all things. So that is that. So writing sample is very important in terms of all things. And we go to the next one, which Fexters also talk about recommendation letters. It's one thing too that it's very important when we come to admissions. So recommendation letters, successful ones develop strong affinity with the recommender and between the recommender and then the applicant. So as Festa said, you just cannot say this person should write this person for him because they have a good credentials. It what they're looking at in a recommendation letter is that the person knows you or has kind of like supported your work or has worked with you somehow. They know your work. And so this is something that you do not have so much control over it as compared to the Westerners here. I have students come to me and said, they write to me and said, "Oh, when I was in your class, I was able to make these connections, and I did this, and I did this, and this, and this, and would you be willing to write a strong recommendation for me?" And so, what we can do to have a little bit of leverage, um, which is not easy at our part of the world when we applying outside the United States, is to be able to write or attend office hours of those who want to. We want them to write for us and then highlight some of the things we took from their class or we are doing. Because when the letter feels more personal, when they feel like they know your work, it raises a lot of questions. So we don't want to see generic kind of like satisfactory letters of recommendation. It could pass. I've seen situations where the letters were not so strong, but it could pass because one, it is human beings making the decisions and not algorithms. So they are able to look at all the parts together to understand. But if you think the person may not write one for you, then go for somebody who could write for you. That also tells you should start making connections and forming relationship and other things. So you see, for example, here they said ex candidates develop an independent research project, revised extensively, and demonstrated curating needed for doctoral study. So kind of, and then they may go on and give examples of what they mean by this. So familiarity, they should know your work. So it's not like you think about and say, oh, I know the dean by the title of the dean of the School of Grad Studies or the dean of Education Studies, then you could write him because he has the title of dean. But if he's the dean or if he the vice chancellor but doesn't know your work much, he might not be able to support your work as well. Um, so could we look at the next slide? Maybe. Uh, Okay, so yeah, I was just giving oh yeah, the next that no could you go back?
Okay.
So some example of what we're looking at, you can see that with this example, if you read this, you will see that this professor or supervisor writing this recommendation clearly has worked with this person, know this person very well, that this person was able to do some things that will be needed in grad school. All they are looking for is that could you thrive? Could you be successful in grad school? And so some of the things, these are some of the things you can bring to the person who is writing the recommendation for you. Sometimes when you write them email, you can add a paragraph and say that, okay, I've been working on this and this and this things. I'll be grateful if you could highlight these things in my in my application or your recommendation for me. It is not being rude. It is not you telling the professor how to do, but it is a suggestion. So see how you could think about and draw their attention to it. Because sometimes when professors teach large classes, it becomes a mental strain on them to think about what can I write about this person. But when you do that, you're able to help them to rethink, to help them to think, to personalize your work for them, other than leaving it in their hands and said, okay, you're a professor, and I think you can write back for me, so write one for me. You could put them to that, okay, when I was in your class, I was able to apply these things outside classroom when I was doing my national service, when I was working in the bank. I was able to, now that I'm teaching at this school, I'm applying the principles we learned in this kind of things, help them understand those things so that they could just pick those lines and put them in your recommendation letters. It will make it feel more personal and um, more and stronger in your application. And then if you look at the next slide, um, now program fit. So as faculty is going through all these things, they're asking themselves like, who could advise these students? Which of our programs could we put this person into? Do we have the expertise in this area? Can we support their research? And so think about this. So they are thinking about um, whether how not to fail you. So if your research is something that they are not so familiar with. So if you are doing Victorian literature and then there's nobody in the program doing Victorian literature kind of thing, so you know that you don't fit into their program because they will want to advise you with expertise. And normally before they do these things too, what happens is that they write emails or consult their professor. We've had an application with somebody who would like to work with you, do you have the bandwidth and the capacity to work with them? So sometimes it's good to kind of like contact them behind the scenes. Sometimes, in relation to this, one thing that happens is that they have the ability to, they have the intellectual capacity to advise you and support your research, but they don't have the space and the bandwidth to do that. And so it's always good to check in and not just see that, oh, this person works in this area, so they can support me. I'm saying this because when you look at this, um, what happened in some of the situation is that the the professor that you are interested in working with them would um would will be advising, will be on 13 to 15 committees. They are chairing 7 dissertations and another 7 or 8 master's theses. They are for the next 4 or 5 years. So sometimes it's good to check in with them. Though they might be in the field of all things, they might not have they are so burdened that they don't have the space to to support you in the next 4 or 5 years. So you might want to. So sometimes they ask them, this person works in your area, but they want to work. Could you support them? They might say no. They will not be able to support you. Not because you don't qualify, but because they don't have the bandwidth at that moment to do that. So it's always good to check in with them, kind of beyond the program fit. So sometimes that's what makes you not fit into a program. And then when we go into the next slide, we see that as an international student, so most of us, I guess, you are international students. One thing I see that some of us are afraid to write in the active voice, use the word I. It sounds like the word I is very informal to us. Now, in your statement of purpose and most of the things you're advocating for yourself, you are free to use the active voice. Write in the I have done this. I have experience. I have. Put yourself there in the front there, kind of a thing. Because most in the English program, most applications that pass use the active voice. They don't do scientific writing, trying to be more objective and being like a research was studied and this topic was understood and was applied and was kind of all thing. Put yourself there. Let them know you are doing it because when you are using more the passive, you are erasing yourself. Sometimes you don't know who is even doing the action and the active. In English program, especially in rhetoric and composition, they want to see you. They want your voice. They want you to put yourself out there, front yourself out there. Um, there, which do not really happen, especially where we come from. And then also your emotions matter, your emotions, kind of all things. So we tend to downplay on our emotions, how we feel about the situation, what we believe in. So you feel free to use the words like I believe and words that capture your emotions, kind of all things. I wish to do this and this kind of. Of course, sometimes we try to be more objective and go with the mental and avoid this kind of emotional language. But when you're able to connect your emotion to experiences and map onto what the program wants, you are able to do those things. And then also, as an international student, you have a lot that you bring that the program may not have or may need. Because one thing about the US and an English program is that they are more interdisciplinary and they are seeking ways to advance knowledge. Sometimes it's like they want to be the first or they want to create alumni. Now, one thing is that they always ask themselves, one question they ask themselves, and when I start the committee, they ask themselves, what kind of alumni are we getting out of this student? Kind of thing. Something we rarely think about. What kind of alumni are we getting? What kind of a graduate are we expecting? Are we expecting somebody to go on to be a president? Somebody who's going to be a world changer, kind of thing. So as as an international student, you bring in a lot of political, environmental, cultural issues that probably the program do not have. So see how you can capitalize on that, and then focus on that in your application, in your statement of purpose, highlight those cultural issues, but map it onto how it causes some kind of change, it brings some relief to people and other things, and other related stuff, kind of things. So that kind of thing, your this thing is very important. Your voice is very important. Your local situations are very important. For example, elections. Most of us have experienced elections, and we experienced the pink sheets, and you and I were not there. Uh, these are things that you could bring, like, so the biometric machine, and we have a professor like Professor Isidore who does kind of things in technical communication. Like, we always see kind of like elections, there's violence, there's the biometric machine not working. This is language, this you can explore in English, you know, things. So think about how do we think about technology in this thing so that it could help that our voting will come for. So this is a political issue that you could bring about. I mentioned our mining issue, like environmental issue. Look, you could think about even the traffic situation in Accra Consulting. These are ways that we could look at cultural issues that we could use, like road signs, language to think about. So let stand out. As we said, the broad thing would help you as an international student. Uh, so basically, what's happening most times when we are English students, we always limit ourselves beyond the like, traffic situation. What has it got to do with me? Galamsey, minus, what has it got to do with me? Election, what has it got to do with me? Maybe a political science student will do. I remember when I was doing my dissertation, I was talking about Asian traditions and contemporary technologies, and how we can bridge contemporary. I can use contemporary technology to preserve our culture. Somebody asked me, a Ghanaian professor in a different university asked me, why are you not doing this in African studies? This is an African studies issue. I said, no, this is topic in English. So these are things that you could do. You could think about. There is always a language issue. There is always a way that we could see there's a communication problem there, and we appreciate that in English. We appreciate those things you bring to they don't want a one-dimensional application of grammar kind of all things. But if that's the case, fine. And then, so that's why I say bring your experience. You've been in traffic before. You might have voted before. You might have seen things before. You might have driven before. Those experiences you bring as international students really help shape knowledge and then production for things. And then, oh yeah. So talking about an experience. So I put some examples here for you to see. So health. You've visited the hospital before. You've listened to the news about malaria, about certain these things. For instance, you look at, okay, when they are communicating health, HIV recording, what strategies do they use? Are the communication effective? This is a topic you can focus on in English thing. What strategies would you use so that we can make malaria a thing of the past by communicating, like even the news broadcasters, or how are they making the information go down there. So there's a communication issue you could always explore in a very interdisciplinary English program. So there's the election thing that I used. Then your community, you bring some of us come from very far villages, and most of our cultures are kind of like being eroded. It's something that you could take upon on yourself. There is AI now, so you could also think about um, what's the effect on our language? Some of us were using chalk, blackboard and chalk. Then we're using pen and paper. Then now there's iPad. Then is there a way that these things could help or hinder our learning in our schools, in our communication settings, going forth? So these are things that you could also focus on. So it's always good, yeah. It's always good to contact and say. One thing about it is that always think about Festo went deeper into this. I'll just line up thing, kind of thing. So there are different types of funding. Things of graduate assistantship. Within that one, we have like assistantship, teaching assistants, and then we have the research assistantship. Some of them could cover your insurance, and we have fellowships, dissertation fellowship, teaching with summer funding. So sometimes when you're applying, you could also ask them like, do you support students in the summer? Because sometimes you need a summer stipend to survive as a student. Sometimes some programs would would provide that, but you need to ask them whether they have funding, because grad school without funding is a very difficult thing to do. So that basically brings me to the end of my presentation about what I saw while I sat in the, then we could continue the conversation in the Q&A session, and if you have something to talk about. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Lamte, for your presentation. Talking about the Q&A session, as the final presenter is about to present what he has for us today, I just wanted to point out that the Q&A session is enabled for this Zoom. And so for those of you who are using your phone, I think if you look below your screen, you should see three dots that says more. If you click on it, you see some, a couple of menu pop up and you see the Q&A session. That's where you can post your questions. I think it's a similar interface for those of you who are using laptops or desktop to connect, because I see some people posting their questions to the chat. If we get to the Q&A session, I'll try to read questions from that side as well. But also you're welcome, as I said, to unmute yourself once you get to that aspect and then ask your question. I also wanted to say that all the resources that Festus mentioned, he has generously provided a link to where all of those resources have been, hosted on the internet. So I have posted a link into the chat session. And so if you look at it, you can copy it somewhere and then you can always have access to it. So with that, let's move on to our final presenter for today, who is my good friend, Cornelius.
Submit just a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, can you see my screen now?
No, it's not shared. Okay. I think it's visible now.
Okay, I think the two presenters have basically covered everything I had to say, which is not bad for starters. So what I would do along the line is to just spell out moments that I think I can add something to what they might have missed or they haven't touched on already. So basically, this is the outline that I'll be using for my presentation. Like Prof has already outlined, we know what an SOP is already. So I'll zoom into how to write an effective SOP, which he has touched on as well, and he has given insightful examples along the line. My focus would then shift to common mistakes that I have seen by reviewing SOPs of some of my colleagues over the years. And then one of the confusion that comes with anytime students are asked to write an SOP is when they encounter a different genre, which is called a personal statement, and which one comes first? What are the distinctions between them? It also becomes an issue, and I also touch on that as well. And then I would offer some drafting and revision strategies that we can all employ in our application process. And I think with the funding opportunities, Festus have done that already, and Prof has also done that, so I wouldn't belabor or waste my time on that. I'll let us just go to the Q&A section where we can have more discussions and see the genesis of questions coming out from what we have presented so far. So like Prof mentioned earlier, what I see as an SOP is an academic genre of a sort, a narrative that tells the intellectual development of an applicant. And it should also express your research interest along the line and indicate what your professional goals are and what experiences you've built over the years. Now, Prof emphasized this idea of preparation for grad school. Most of what you'll be doing in grad school will be based on research. So what they seek to see is, are you prepared enough to come into our program? That is one of the things that you should think about when I'm crafting your SOP. And most importantly, are you a better fit for our program? So in my experience, when I was coming to Michigan Tech, I had to write an SOP like many of us did. And my SOP was tilted towards the program as well as a specific faculty member. Now, the mistake I did was I looked at multiple faculties, but I didn't look at whether they were still there, or I didn't reach out to them like Prof mentioned earlier. So one thing I would say is when you select a faculty member you'd like to research with or work under when you're in a program, try as much as possible to reach out to them to see if they are still there in the first place. Because in my case, I had the faculty member still on the school's, the department's platform. But when I reached here, I tried contacting them, and I was told that this particular faculty has actually retired over the years. So in perspective, it means if I had only one research interest in my bag, I was going to be stranded. So I had to pivot along the line. So one thing you'd have to do is when aligning with the program in a particular faculty, make sure that the faculty you have there is also still available. Now, one of the things that people most often foreground or kind of like leave at the background is what you seek or what can you also bring to the table. So first of all, you are going to benefit from this particular program. The big question is, what are you bringing as an individual to the program? And it has to do with the perspectives or the uniqueness of you as an individual. What are you going to research that is different from what we've been doing over the years? And I think this is something that each program would like to be a pioneer of. If you're bringing something new to the table, you'll be a strong candidate. Now, to write a strong SOP, I would say it should tell a coherent story. And what do I mean by a coherent story? It should have these three components, and I will touch on each of them along the line. The first one has to do with the academic development of the applicant, the readiness for grad school, and you also demonstrate the idea of program fit, which Prof touched a bit on earlier. So what do I mean by your academic development? So what is the genesis of your research? So where did the idea or the topic of your research generate from? It could be from coursework. I, for instance, had my research interest from coursework that I took back at KNUST. It could be same. It could be something that you encountered while sitting in traffic, like Prof mentioned earlier. And what have you done over the years in terms of research or teaching experiences? Have you been part of a research project, be it data collection, data analysis, data coding, whatever that it is, you can bring it to the table along the way. And have you taught before? Because most of the funding opportunities that Prof and Festus mentioned earlier had to do with like teaching. And I think most of the programs in English, you'd be expected to teach. So if you have a teaching experience, that is a big plus for you. So these are some of the things that you can foreground whilst writing your SOP. Now, you could also mention a number of mentors or projects that have shaped your thinking. So the mere fact that you've mentioned your research interest or that you've done this coursework or you've done these teaching experiences, it's not enough. What are the key takeaways from these projects or these mentors that you've had over the years? Well, how have they challenged you as an individual? How you are thinking? Have they prompted you to look at things differently? Are you looking at things from a different perspective as opposed to when you were doing those projects? So these are the genesis of what we call your research interest. It could be a novel area of research. It could be an extension of something that you were doing earlier. And then what experiences motivate your future research? This is the key component of your SOP in the sense that it articulates what you have done. So the first 4 points, bulleted points, kind of tells us what you have done over the years, what experiences you've gathered over the years. But the last one kind of summarizes everything and gives us a foreshadow of who you will become in the future. This is where you tell us, this is the kind of research I want to do. And this is what motivates me to do that kind of research. And this is what I mean by telling a coherent story. It isn't just about listing your research interest or your significant coursework, but telling us how one builds on the other. And how can you demonstrate readiness for grad school? There are a number of ways that you can do so. And I don't mean that you should have all these under your belt before you can apply for grad schools. It could be either one or two or three of these things in combination. But if you have all of them, it means you are already a strong candidate for any grad program. So the first one, I think I touched on it a bit, research projects. What projects have you done over the years? What was your role? What impact did you bring to it? Was it a teamwork? It's the teamwork. What did you bring to the table? How did it change the project entirely? Just tell us your contribution to that particular project. It could be a thesis or a dissertation, depending on the context where you are coming from. These are just register variations. So in Ghana, we call them thesis or dissertation, but in the US, they have the extension. That's what I meant by that. So have you written a thesis, and what did you do in that particular thesis? It also boils down to your topic, your research area, your contributions to knowledge. What did you find? What is interesting about what you did? Is this something you'd like to build on? Is it something that you'd like to extend further, or you like to look at it from a different perspective? This is also something that would show in your SOP that you are ready for grad school. If you are lucky, when I was an undergrad, I never had the opportunity to go for conferences before applying. But if you're an undergrad and you have a conference presentation already, that is a plus for you. If you're a master's student and you have conference presentations and you're applying for PhD, this is a big plus for you as well. It shows that you have the ability to draft abstract that can be accepted for conference presentations, which shows that you are grad school ready. If you have publications, which is rare but possible, it means you are having a stronger chance of getting into the programs that you're applying to. But mind you, this application process is holistic. It doesn't mean that if you have publications, automatically you get into a grad program. But if you have it, you have a stronger SOP going in with your application. Like I mentioned, teaching experience is one of the ways that you can demonstrate that you are ready for grad school. And this is not common within the Ghanaian context, but some people along the line have had internship opportunities. So you can also highlight these ones as well as leadership roles. So like I mentioned earlier with this particular slide, you don't need to have all these under your belt. You can have just a combination of 2 or 3 should be enough for you to have a strong recommendation that demonstrates that you're ready for grad school. Now, how do you demonstrate that you are fit for the program? And I think Prof earlier mentioned a variety of disciplines that you can go into with your English background. And I think it is good for those incoming, because I didn't have the opportunity to know that these are some of the things that I could research about. That was very insightful for those coming. If you don't have a research idea, if you have access to the slide, it gives you an insight. Okay, this is something that I can do. Is it an area I'll be interested in? And you can draft something that actually shows that you are in line with the particular program. So if you see the earlier slide that Prof gave, we see writing studies, we see technical communication. Each department has emphasis or things that they are looking out for. So for example, Michigan Tech here, the writing studies discipline is becoming strong, but it's not as strong as compared to the tech home, in my experience, or like based on the courses that we've taken here so far. So if you are applying to Michigan Tech and you are foregrounding either of these programs, if you foreground tech home, it means you are going to be a better fit for the program as opposed to writing studies. It is still an upcoming one. That doesn't mean you shouldn't apply to MTU if you have writing studies, but it is just to foreground the point that when you're applying for a program, make sure that your SOP is tilted towards the department. What are they emphasizing the most? And with those kinds of emphasis, it makes you a good fit for the program. Now, sometimes you need to identify faculty members as well. What you intend doing? Do we have people there that are going to guide you? You have researchers there. And like Prof mentioned, sometimes you can have the faculty members there, but they wouldn't have the time to give you the needed guidance when you come into the program. So the best thing to do is reach out to them and see if they are actually available or free. Because sometimes they would have a number of PhD students, a number of master students that they are supervising on thesis committees, and they also have some duties outside just supervision as well. So it could be a conflict of interest on their part. So just reach out to them and make sure that this person that I'm looking out for to working under is actually free and available for me to work with. Now, some of the things or some of the questions that you need to have at the back of your mind is, how will the program help you achieve your goals? So broadly, you'd have to reflect that in your SOP and let them know that this is how the program is going to help me achieve the goals that I've felt out along the line. And now, how will you as an individual contribute to the department? So as a student coming in, you're not just only going to benefit from the program, you're also going to have to contribute to the program some way, somehow. It could be teaching, it could be in a form of other forms of service, but make sure that you try as much as possible to also show that this is what I'm bringing to the table. And that also shows your credibility as an applicant. So the bottom line of all these bulleted points is how your research interest kind of aligns with that of the program. If there's no alignment, your application is most likely not to be favored. And know that you are competing with other equally competent students coming in. So make sure that you are making the most informed decision in relation to the program fit. Sometimes it doesn't mean that you are not a good student or you're not good enough. It just means that this program doesn't prioritize the kind of research that you are into. So what are some of the common mistakes that students usually do when it comes to writing an SOP? So part of what I just laid out is having a coherent story or a narrative. So it's not just about listing things for people to see, but it should be in a kind of like building on one another. And if you list your accomplishments without context, maybe you were the best graduating student in your class. How many were you in the class in the first place? So you could be 5 students and you're the best graduating student. It wouldn't be weighed the same way that somebody in a class of 120 was the best graduating student. So give a bit of context in relation to the accomplishment that you've made over the years. Also repeating your CV. Some people just list what they have on their CV and they write a listed form. That isn't going to make it, or it's not going to cut it in the relation to writing a strong SOP. And the most important one here, or the most common mistake here, is using the same CV or the same SOP, for every institution. So given that each program kind of has what they are looking for, you don't need to, you should have a general SOP. That is what I did. I had a general SOP that I have ideas of what the kinds of things I'm looking to do in grad school. But anytime I'm to write an SOP to a school, what I did was I looked at what the school is looking out for and tilt my SOP to meet that of the institution. So make sure that your SOP is always tilted that of the institution you are applying to. And most importantly, when you ignore faculty or program fit. So if you have a research area that doesn't have a faculty member or the program it's not emphasizing that kind of research, it means you're not going to kind of make the cut. And it's a common mistake that people make. Or sometimes, which might be funny, submitting an edited draft. I've had instances where people have sent me their CV as their final, no, not their CV, their SOP, which is in the final stage to be submitted to have a final review. And I've seen a lot of grammatical errors and other mistakes that shouldn't be in it as the final draft of your SOP. So these are some of the things that when drafting your SOP, you take cognizance of and make sure that you don't repeat or you don't fall victim of these situations, because it drills the credibility of your SOP, or it doesn't make it a strong SOP at the end of the day. What are some of the writing and revision strategies that you could employ? This is something that has been running through the entire presentation so far. First of all, start early. Writing an SOP isn't a one-time sitting process. You don't have to just sit down a day and just draft entirely what you're going to use for your application. It takes time. Sometimes you write this good idea, tomorrow you sit down and you see that, no, this isn't articulating what I wanted to do in the first place. And you'd have to tweak it here and there. And the moment you start doing those tweaking, you get a clear sense of what you're actually looking out for in the program and how to draft a better SOP. Now, this might sound scary given our African context. Sometimes we are timid reaching out and all those things, but it is a common practice in the US where you reach out to faculty before actually applying to your grad program. Actually, I'm at Michigan Tech, but I'll be going to Texas Tech. And when I was doing my application, I applied to one school. I was applying to one school, and what I did was I reached out to a professor, and he actually made us meet via Zoom, and I shared my research interest. And funny enough, the program I was applying to was kind of like more of a rhetoric and composition program. And this particular faculty member advised me that my research interest lies more in going to Texas Tech than coming to school. And based on that recommendation, I went into the Texas Tech school website, searched for the Tech Home program, and I really saw that actually my research interest is a better fit for Texas Tech than the school I was actually applying to. And I applied, and here's the case. I'm now going to that particular school. This is just to show that no need to be timid. There's nothing, nobody will take anything away from you if you reach out to a faculty member. And one thing I've come to realize is out of personal experience with faculty members in the US system is that they are very open and honest with when it comes to research or the things that they can do or they can't do. They will tell you outrightly that you are a better fit for this particular program. And they even recommend schools that would better suit your research. And so this is one of the strategies that I would advise that most of you put at your list when drafting your SOP or your general application process. It will help you a lot. And it is something that you can also feature into your SOP. You could spell out that I've already discussed these research interests that I've expressed earlier with this particular faculty member. What it shows is that you've actually looked at what the person is doing and you've actually reached out to the person and you are in alignment with that particular faculty member. It makes the admission decision easier for them. One thing you could also do, which also falls back to context dependent. So in the US here, you can have faculty members give you feedback on your SOP materials. Most of those that recommended my application process, they actually had access to my SOP and all my other application documents, and they gave me feedback as to what is working and what was not working. And mind you, these are the very people that are also making admission decisions in the various departments that we have here, and they know people outside as well. So they know what is actually going to be best for you as an applicant. So if back in Ghana, you have a faculty member who is invested in what you are doing, I know it's going to be difficult because the Ghanaian context isn't the same as the US context in terms of the numbers that we have in our departments. But I was fortunate that I had a faculty member that was interested in the kind of work that I was doing. They reviewed most of my applications document, especially my SOP, before I submitted to MTU, and I actually got it, and I'm here. So if you have a faculty member who is interested in the work that you are doing, you actually share your SOP to them and let them take a look. You also have peers that are also applying to these schools, or they're also making applications. They could be your reviewers as well. You could share with them and ask them for feedback, or people that are already ahead of you. So you have Festus here, you have Samuel, and you have myself here. If you reach out to any of us and you have the free time, we could review your SOP for you and give you like some feedback in relation to what we have experienced. That doesn't mean it's expert opinion, but it gives you a better frame coming into the application process. Now, I've emphasized this point already. Tailor each kind of a SOP to a specific program. Make sure that you don't have just a generic SOP for all the programs, so that I'm applying to Michigan Tech, this is for it. Purdue, this is for it. Iowa, no. Have a specific SOP for each of the programs that you are looking out for. And revise for clarity. This is something that we often kind of take for granted because we have English at our fingertips. We think we are the masters of the language, but sometimes it can be disheartening to read an SOP or an essay from a student of English and you have a maximum level of grammatical errors in it. It begs the question as to whether you are even a good fit for the program that you are applying to. Now, one of the challenges that you might come across or the confusion that you might encounter is when you are asked to write both an SOP and a personal statement. So these are two distinct genres. And I would just like to put a caveat out there that given what we said about the SOP and the personal SOP earlier, there isn't a definite definition of what it is, but different institutions have different conceptions of what an SOP should be. So in some institutions, you'd find that there's a measure of what they are looking for typically in an SOP and a personal statement. So you see a measure of what I said earlier and what I'm coming to say here. So with the personal statement, this one is kind of a reflective narrative that explains how an applicant's personal background, your lived experiences, certain challenges that you've encountered, what do you value as an individual, or what have you overcome over the years in your academic journey, and how prepared or how has those experiences prepared you to contribute positively to the graduate community. Like Prof mentioned earlier, the issue of diversity is very key to the English department. They want to pioneer different forms of research, make it interdisciplinary. So your perspective or your personal reflection here could be an insight into a new form of research endeavor, a novel area where we actually spearhead new forms of research. And this could be a key gateway for you to express those experiences. So don't shy away from telling us difficult moments that you've experienced as an individual. Those instances are actually valued. And we should, as much as possible, foreground those experiences, no matter how disheartening they are. If you had difficulties paying your school fees back home, express it. What I would say is don't lie, but just make sure that whatever lived experiences that kind of touch you as an individual, make sure that you foreground them in this particular personal statement. So what we would say is a two-sided slide here, what the SOP kind of like foregrounds and what the personal statement kind of foregrounds. So with the SOP, it focuses on the applicant as a scholar. We want to see you as a researcher. What potential have you as a scholar, or do you have if you come into our program? What are your research interests? What is the academic preparation that you have so far? What career goals, and do you fit for this particular program you're applying to? And most of them kind of foreground whether you are ready for graduate studies, like I mentioned earlier. But with the personal statement, we are looking out for you as an individual, you are a person. What are your personal experiences? What have you gone through over the years? What have you overcome? What will you say your story of growth is? How have you grown as an individual? And what potential does that kind of enrich the academic community in which you are coming into? So I think at the beginning of the presentations, I think Festus mentioned some of the schools that are kind of I don't want to say biased to Black people, but like they're kind of more accommodating to people of Black origin. This could be one of the areas that you could also shoot in because you have a marginalized experience. It could be something that you foreground in your personal statement. So this is just to tell us that each of these statements has their individual requirements. So one has what it's looking out for, and one has what it's looking out for. Make sure that you don't mix them in your application process. Some schools would merge the two for you to write as a single component. Others would ask you to actually separate them. Other schools will also require you to write only one. They will require not two of them. They will just require only one. I've applied to schools that require only the statement of purpose and don't require the personal statement. So in some, your SOP kind of answers why graduate school, why this program, and why this research endeavor. But your personal statement is kind of asking you, who are you? What has shaped you? And what perspectives will you bring? Like I mentioned earlier, there isn't a fine line. It's just a thin line between these two. But what would help you the most, and I think what has been very helpful to me, is that most of the schools in the US actually spell out what they are looking for in their statement of purpose. So, for example, I just took a list. I just took two schools that I applied to and what their word count or page limit for each of the two genres that I've just talked about were. So, school A, I've just decided to eliminate the names of the school, but if you want, I can mention them along the line. So, school A, for instance, I said they want 300 to 500 words. That's the limit for writing their SOP. And what they're actually looking out for is spelled out on this side using these 5 questions. Sometimes you don't need to answer all these 5 given the word limit, but I would advise try to touch on each of them along the line. So as we can see, the first thing they want to see, what are your professional plans and career goals? How will graduate study help you achieve those goals? What are your research, scholarly, or creative interests? How have your experiences? And here they put it in quote. They give you the kind of things that they are looking out for: coursework, research internships, publications, community service, etc. So how are those experiences kind of prepared you for graduate study? Why are you good? Why are you a good fit for this particular program? This is where you actually articulate that you actually meet the requirements of the program and you could be a good fit. Which faculty members align with your research interests? These are things that we spelled out earlier. For school B, they're also looking out up to 500 words. They don't have minimum word count, but this one they had like minimum word counts here. For them, they have a general SOP. So if you're a master's student, you're going to write a different SOP as opposed to somebody who is writing for a PhD program. So for PhD, they have like an extensive kind of like limit. So we have like 1 to 3 double-spaced pages for doctoral students. Why are you starting or continuing graduate study? These are some of the questions they come. Oh, I think I've given the name of the school out at this particular point. What do you want to study at Iowa State? What are your professional plans, career goals, and research interests? What experiences are particularly applicable to the program? What special abilities, awards, publications, professional experiences strengthen your application? Have you had prior research experiences or contact with any faculty? So you can see that the foreground or they kept into brackets secondary. So this last point, bulleted point, is something that you can do away with that answering for your SOP. But the other elements are things that they're actually looking out for because they have given you 1 to 3 double-spaced pages to do so. So these are things that they actually foregrounded. So if you go to the website or the departmental website of the schools you're applying to, out of 1 to 5, 4 of them would always outline what should go into their SOP. And as you can see, there are different things that they are foreground. So this is why I said most instances, you would have to tailor your SOP to the needs of the department or the discipline that you're applying. And here too, we have some schools. So school A, the same school that I used earlier, they have similar questions for students applying to their school, and they are looking out for these responses to these ones. But this one, it's not for an SOP, it's for a personal statement. So how have your background and made you persistent and resourceful? Go back. No. How have your experiences prepared you to contribute to an academic community that values diverse background and perspectives? So these are the first 2 prompts that they want to actually hear from you, what you have to say in response to these questions. The third one, again, is kind of an optional thing that you could add up to. For example, is there context or mitigating information that helps explain your academic record? So most instances, some people finish grad, they would have to do national service back in Ghana, and then some would have a gap year before they apply to schools in the US, or maybe they've applied and they've not been able to secure admission. So the best thing is when you are given a window like this, you'd have to address some of these wide educational gap. Why were you not able to continue right off from school? This could be an opportunity for you to express the gap in your application record. And then school B, for instance, didn't have the need for a personal statement. So this is why I said like the personal statement could be required or it could not be required. But the SOP, most instances is something that you must kind of foreground. I think Prof and Festus actually did justice to this particular section. And one thing I would like to just mention would be the university-wide fellowships. So most of them are things that some schools you actually apply for them, but some schools you are nominated by the program. So that in my case, I was nominated. I didn't ask for a university-wide fellowship, but they'll just look at your application, and out of the incoming students, they'll say, okay, we think you have this particular potential, and they'll nominate you. But it's highly competitive, so the likelihood of getting this it's minimal, but that shouldn't discourage you. But the department will actually communicate to you that you've been nominated for this particular fellowship, and they themselves will be waiting for feedback from whether the college level or the university-wide level, the departmental level. So whatever the fellowship be, there will be a line of communication to let you know that whether you are in the run for it or not. And instances where you get it, it has certain benefits. Some of the benefits are some of them are fully funded with or without no kind of obligation. You don't need to teach, you don't need to do any kind of work to compensate or kind of align with them. Some of them are just all right for you to take throughout your graduate studies. So I think it has to do, getting a university fellowship has to do, it's more holistic. It's not just based on your SOP. So your CV, your publication history, your other application documents all come handy, and especially your recommendation letters. So make sure that you aren't kind of foregrounding one aspect of your application. You're giving emphasis or focus to only one aspect of your application. It should is a holistic thing. So make sure that you have a strong CV, a strong recommendation letters, and then a strong SOP, and then personal statement, whatever the case might be for you. So I think with these outline slides, I would just like us to move to the Q&A. If you have any questions, I think questions that come out from the presentations, we can better address them, and we see areas where we can do better. Okay, so Sam, I think I'm at the last end of my presentation.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Cornelius. So we will not waste time at all. We will move straight into the Q&A session. And I've seen um, a good number of people post their questions in the Q&A session. So again, we would prefer that you post your questions to the Q&A feature rather than in the chat. I see a few people posted their questions in the chat. I'll try to look at it and read it. But also for people who, for some reason, would want to speak rather than type their questions, if you want to do so, you can raise your hand. There is a way that you can use a feature in Zoom. If you look below your interface, you should see React. And then you can, show the hand raising emoji. And then I will see that you want to speak. And then I'll call your name for you to speak. Thank you again, Cornelius. So we will jump straight into the Q&A session. And I see here that the first question from Priscilla. And so the way that we are going to proceed is that some of the questions may be quite targeted at a particular, presenter for today. But all of you are welcome, to weigh in with your own experiences and your knowledge about the questions that they are asking. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and read the first question, which is from Priscilla, and she's asking, can a retired professor who once taught you write a recommendation letter for you? So any one of you can take
Yeah, I
it.
think I can take lead on that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. If someone has taught you for even one class, the person has the ability to write a good recommendation letter for you. But the focus should be much more on the content, right? I've been in the position of writing recommendation letters for some of my students that I taught them just African studies for just one semester in level 100. But then I have that close relationship with them, and I've been studying them throughout their years on campus. So if that person is writing something for you, make sure the person knows what they are writing and how the structure should even go. That will be able to help you. So I think it's possible.
Hey, does anyone of you want to add something to it?
Yeah, so I think it's I mean for a retired professor it adds a lot of weight to it too. So because the professor is not retired, it's not writing the recommendation um from the space of retired, but then from the space of how they know you, how they've engaged your work, and how your work has impact and could is research worthy. So that's what's important. And I mean, professors never retire. So for that retirement, it doesn't really take anything from the professor at all. I'll say go ahead and then let the professor write, retired professor write for you.
Yeah. So there's still another question on, I think there are a lot of questions on recommendation letter. So Greg is saying that he completed his master's degree 5 years ago and now is considering doing a PhD. How would he get a recommendation letter?
So yeah, this is the difficulty we have in Africa where probably record keeping may not be there, and you might be in a large class of thousands of hundreds of people, and so they may not. But I will start by saying, once you have your masters, you've kind of had like close relations with professors. I mean, masters is at a smaller level, so that makes it a little bit easier. So if you could go to their office hours or offices and then introduce yourself to them and speak to them if they are willing to. Now, one thing too that you also have to remember that all your recommenders should not come from academia. You know, if you have worked in the if you have worked in the industry somehow, one of the this thing could come from somewhere in academia, outside academia, who could write a good recommendation letter for you. The only thing that they have to make the connections that you are ready for grad student work, that you have what it takes to kind of. That's what will be important at this point.
Okay. Any other? Okay, so I think this is still great. He's asking about what if in a situation where you could not publish an article, what would you do to enhance your chance to get admitted? I think what he's trying to say is that he doesn't have any publication. What can he do in the absence of that to be competitive?
I think publication isn't the go-to or the only means where you can express your readiness for grad school. And I say this because of personal experience. So right from undergrad, from KNUST, I had a friend of mine. He's actually in Hong Kong now doing his PhD. As at the time he was doing his application, he didn't have a single publication. He had not been to a conference, but he graduated with first class and he applied straight to the Hong Kong Fellowship program. They have like about 8 different schools, top schools there that look out for applicants. Within the Ghanaian, okay, let me give a caveat. Within Ghana, they take students from 3 institutions: KNUST, UCC, and then Legon. So if you have first class and you can make a strong case, they would actually listen to you. And in his case, he was actually a radio host during vacations. So he used that as a liaison to actually get a fully funded program. And he's actually back in Ghana collecting his data as we speak. So yes, getting publication isn't the only way, but you'd have to find an alternative. And what is the alternative is the big question. So if you don't have publications, what else have you done? Be it industry or in academia, it would work out in your favor.
Okay, thank you. And I see one person with their hand raised. Damola, I don't know if you are sorry if I did not mention the name correctly, but you have your hand raised. So if you could go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Samuel, and thank you to all our speakers. I mean, I was part of the last year's meeting, and it was really, really nice. I benefited so much, and it improved my application for fall 2026. So I'll put my questions together actually, because I applied for 2026. I got a fully funded offer, but because Nigeria is part of the countries that are not allowed to, enter the US currently, so I couldn't apply for my visa and continue with every other processes. And sincerely, it's been disheartening. And preparing for next fall, I've been thinking about it. Or should I just forget about the US and maybe concentrate on other countries? While I have that as part of my plans, I really still want to consider maybe 1 or 2 schools in the US, thinking that things might change very soon for we Nigerians. But I want to ask my question. I want. I'm sorry. I'm trying to pick the name. The PhD candidate in higher education and international studies or something. I want him to
Yes, you're
answer my
referring to
question.
Festus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's the name. I want him to answer my question. So, for some time now, that field and rhetoric and composition has been my forte. It has been the areas that I really like. So I applied for MA rhetoric and composition, and I've been thinking that for my PhD I might have to switch to something in education policy, because that is like my final, bus stop in academics that I would want to explore. So I really need guidance on that. Should I just go straight doing my master's and PhD in that field? Or, as a graduate of English, because I didn't have any background in education, I read pure English in Nigeria, right? So I just want to know, do you think I should just do a master's straight and PhD in higher education, administration, and international education? Or as I applied last year into HEMA, rhetoric, and composition, should I do that first, then, switch in later? Thank you.
That's a very great and thoughtful question. Yes, I would encourage you not to put all your eggs in one basket. Why am I saying that? You have a direct experiences and also a background in English, right? Which will be able to give you more access to funding opportunities. So I will encourage you to look into applying for the English related program, while also exploring the other one. It means that you are now going to double the work that you have to do in the whole application process. But then even with that, right, you can decide to come in the US. When you are done with your master's, then you apply for a PhD in higher education with a research focus in that. So for instance, one of my research work that I've published for the past 1 year is on linguisticism, right? So linguisticism in higher education. Most often we talk about racism, sexism, gender issues, but we don't talk about how, linguisticism affects student academic success. So that is something that I explored. It means that you can actually get into the PhD program and explore your research within English related stuffs. So I will encourage you to go ahead, focus on the English, get the funding. When you come in and you are done with the masters, you can shoot straight into a PhD. I know a couple of folks who did English education or a master of arts in English, and now they are pursuing masters in higher education and student affairs.
Yeah, well, I hope your question has been answered.
Yes.
So great. We still have a couple of questions on recommendation letters, but I think the drift of both questions are the same. So I'll try to summarize them, and then if they've not been answered already, any one of the presenters will go on to answer it. So Kojo is basically asking, he had a master's, 1 year master's from the University of Cape Coast, which was online, for which reason he did not have any, you know, face-to-face contact with any of the professors, and he seems they are reluctant to, write him recommendation letters. He's asking what should he do, and Sewa Kuto is also asking a similar question. In a case, she graduated in 2024 with a degree in English, but she's also facing the same problem of reluctance. She is trying to request recommendation letters from the professors, but they are not responding. So they are both asking what should they do. I think this has been, answered already, but of course, we can
But
reiterate
let
that.
me let me try and ask them a question. Did they pursue this program in a distance program, or like, sometimes people do distance program. So I'm asking, for Kwesi.
Yeah, that's Kojo. Yeah, that would be Kojo. Yeah. So you can
Okay.
unmute yourself to add a follow-up. So Kojo, if you can hear us, you can, respond to that. I think his question says that
Yeah,
he did it
yeah,
he
hello,
did it online.
hello,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
hello.
Kojo.
Yeah, so please, the program was via distance. And, from the onset, we were informed that it is going to be a blend of online and then face-to-face session. But along the line, we were made to succumb to only online. So we did not have any face-to-face contact with lecturers.
You can reach out. I'll be able to connect you to two people to write recommendation letters for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Please, your email again.
I think he would put his contact in the chat box so that those of you who would want to get in touch later on, can do that. So you should look into the chat box. So yeah, Sewakuto, I hope that has also answered your question on how you can get a recommendation letter for lecturers who seem reluctant. But if I recall, Cornelius was, trying to make us understand that, it's not only people who taught you as your professors who can recommend you. Anyone in some other professional capacity can do that. Yeah, so
Sam, let me add something to that.
okay.
They should also get recommendation letters from their TAs. For instance, if Cornelius taught me back then in the days, he has every opportunity to write a recommendation letter for me. Now, some of the recommendation letters, they don't have to necessarily be on a letterhead, right? Like you type it within the application portal itself. So there's a section for you as a faculty member or a recommender to upload, and there's a section for you to type. So for instance, if I'm using Cornelius, who is no longer working with the previous institution, he can basically type everything he wants to type about me in the application form that will be sent to him. And so let's not put much of the pressure on the fact that I want a professor or a faculty member to write for me. What if you don't get those people? I'm in the States, but when I was applying for my PhD, I used one professional recommender, which was basically a Gmail, right? I used a Gmail for the person to write a recommendation letter for me. And that was one of my strongest recommendation letters I personally read. Okay, so let's look at those angles as well so that these recommendation letters issues are always very like issues that we cannot solve them in one day. So let's look
Yes.
at the options we have.
Right.
Hello.
So I'll now look
Let
at
me
some
say
of the.
one. Can
Oh,
I say
sorry.
one thing?
Right. Go on, Doc.
So professors are very, very, very busy people. And you get at least, if you're a good teacher, you get at least 20 calls or emails about recommendation letters. And so if you are not somebody who is very disciplined with checking your email, it gets lost in a lot of things. So if you are really, really interested in this person doing this thing for you, if you can walk to the person personally, that is one of the good things. I realized in Ghana that if you send an email, you need to follow up with a call or follow up with a walk into the office. So do that if you are able. Don't just depend on the email. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Prof, for that. So I will now look at those who have their hands raised, and the first person I'm saying here is Bright Kluche. Could you unmute yourself and then ask your question, Bright?
All right. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Good evening to all the panels and the leaders here. So my first question is, and a very good evening to my mentor and then Mr. Festus. This is one of your students, Ubuntu. So my first question is, when contacting potential graduate advisors before submitting an application, what specific details make an initial email stand out positively to a faculty member? That is my first question. My second question is, what sets a successful fellowship or departmental funding application apart from a standard application package? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bright. One of our presenters can take that question.
Sam, I missed the last part of his question, the last component.
Okay, Bright, could you try to summarize the last part?
Okay, my second
Yeah.
question was, what set a successful fellowship or departmental funding application apart from a standard application package?
Okay. So in my experience, what the advice I've gotten throughout is anytime you are reaching out to a potential faculty you'd like to work with or whose interests align with yours, one of the things, because of what Prof. Abozo just mentioned, they are very busy people. So you try to maximize the time you have with them. So if it's one email, make sure that you're making the best impact at the first instance. So one thing you shouldn't forget is make sure that you have your CV attached to the email that you are sending to them, and make sure that if you have your proposal already or you have a frame of thought in relation to what you'd like to do, have it attached as well. And you should be able to articulate your research interest how it aligns with that particular professor in that particular email as well. So these are the three components that I think when emailing a potential faculty or supervisor, make sure that you foreground within the space of time that you have. And it should be very impactful that it's evidence of how the two of you can work together or you have a research interest along the line. To your second question, which has to do with what distinguishes a standard application from those, most of the fellowships that we touch on, especially university-wide, in my experience, you get nominated based on your standard application. So if you have a very strong application packet, what they do is the department would nominate you for a departmental fellowship or a college fellowship or university-wide fellowship. So, but it's contextual, so it depends on the university that you are dealing with. But in most instances, you don't indicate the fellowship that you are applying for. Some of them are kind of saying that you are nominated for, and those ones are very competitive. But yes, that would be my response. Then I think Festus and the others could also chip in.
Yeah, I think in terms of my personal experiences with emailing faculty members, I always have a different perspective when it comes to that. The first one, if you want to get a response, is the subject of your email. Most of you don't focus on the subject of the email. You know, faculty members are busy, just as Prof mentioned, right? But you having a very long email subject can even put some of them off, right? So I advise that, let's say I'm interested in Prof research in AI in education. I'll just write interest in your research in AI in blah, blah, blah. Or prospective students seeking research collaboration in that. So when you are done with that, the content itself is also an issue, right? They have just 5-10 minutes to read those emails and probably choose to respond and not to respond. But if you write a whole lot of 3 paragraphs, very bulky paragraphs to them, majority of them are, I mean, Prof is here. They're not going to respond to you. So those that go through our training, I gave them a very simple format. And when I started working with them through last year, they were like, oh, but why do you want us to make this very short? A lot of them used that approach and they had a lot of faculty members responding to them. Now, I have a different perspective from what Cornelius said. That doesn't mean what Cornelius said is wrong, but I'm coming to add up. If you are attaching something to send an email to Dr. Lamte, and this CV that you have attached is something that has not been in fact, let me use the word critically peer reviewed. It is highly possible that Dr. Lamte will not respond to your email. So some of them, they actually read the emails. If you use the email tracker, and there's an email tracker system that you can see. When a faculty member reads the email, you see the time that they read the email. Majority of us attach documents and PDFs when those things have not been clearly aligned, like well articulated, right? As soon as they see that, it put them off. From my own personal experiences, when I was navigating my doctoral application journey, I never included anything like a PDF. I just introduced myself. This is what I've done, and I'm interested in that. And my email subject, right? When you go to my email subject, I have my LinkedIn there. I have a very short link that you can actually go and read about my website, like a very personal, professional website I've made. Which you have my CV there. You have all the academic achievements I've made there. So you see, I was very, very strategic in that area. Guess what? When the professors read the email, they'll go. You see, when you are using LinkedIn Premium, say Professor so and so read and viewed your profile. As soon as you see that message, you come back, the professor has responded to you. You see, so I advise against attaching documents. If it is about transcript, that is fine. That is when you have a very high, academic transcript. I'll encourage you for that. And maybe your research proposal has been reviewed by Professor Lamte, right? If Professor Lamte has reviewed your research proposal, I will personally encourage you to include it. But imagine someone who actually went through a bachelor's degree program and the research that they did it in 12 groups. The person just did part of the literature review that has not been clearly, kind of reviewed well, and the supervisor didn't give them the attention that they need. I'm saying this because I have lived within those 2 walls where I took my undergraduate thesis, the project work I did at the University of Cape Coast, and I cried for 3 solid hours when I compared it to my first year experience in my higher education program in the state. So I always advise people, if you are touching anything, make sure whatever you are touching will catch the eye and the attention of the faculty member. You align your CV very well, nicely done. It's not about having 12 pages of CV. I was using just 3 pages of CV, and I was using that throughout my doctoral applications, but I still made it through. So making sure you align those things before you attach is very, very key. Above all, make sure someone review for you. And the fact that Dr. Lamte is here, you are, in fact, you are great already. Yeah.
Okay, Doc. I see that you are nodding and you look very thoughtful. Do you want to add something? Yeah,
Oh,
Dr.
I
Lamptey.
was nodding because I could just agree with what he's saying. There's nothing much I could add. Probably sometimes if you want to attach a long thing, you give them a heads up, like, would you be willing to look into it, or I may send this in the next email or something if they are okay with it. Yeah.
Okay, so the next question, and to this, I would actually recommend Joseph. So, Joseph, you're asking what makes a strong statement of purpose. What I would honestly recommend is that this session is being recommended. I mean, it's been, sorry, it's been recorded and it's be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So I think Cornelius's presentation on, he literally had a line that said how to write, something like strong, statements of purpose. And I think his presentation was very, very, detailed and insightful. So I would highly recommend you visit that for the purpose of time so that we can take the few more questions that we have here. With that, I'll move on to the next question from Ebenezer Tarekon, who is asking, do bachelor's degree students in social science or education seeking a graduate or teaching assistant position require GRE? And then I think he's also asking, do graduates of English education or English require GRE? So his question is mainly about whether if you're an applicant who is looking at getting graduate assistant, some sort of graduate funding, do you have to, write the GRE?
Let me see. So I happen to have taught GRE and SAT over the years. And what I've seen is that there's a phasing out of those requirements. And it has to do with a lot of assessment issues. Those who are into assessment knows why they are doing those things. But in some instances, it will be something that is required. But if you email them and indicate that you had your first degree in English with English as your major, they can waiver it for you. Most instances, it actually happens. And for those of you who went to KNUS, we actually have this English proficiency letter that does the magic trick. Most of the schools I applied to didn't require English proficiency when I was coming for my master's. Those that required, I just uploaded the English proficiency letter and then it was waived for me. So it's dependent on the university. Some of them actually would require it, but if you try the back door, if it doesn't work, it means you'd have to find an alternate. It's very expensive getting GRE in Ghana. It's very, very expensive. The tutoring is something else, and the exams itself is a whole lot. So, in my experience, get an English proficiency letter from your department, and if they ask for it, you could present it as evidence of your ability to articulate or stand in front of people and speak. That is always the worry for most of the faculty members.
Okay. Any other? Okay, I'll move to the next question from Raphael. He's asking, can I use the same set of recommendation letters to apply for graduate studies to different universities?
Can you take the question again?
Can I use the same sets of recommendation letters to apply for graduate studies to different universities?
Okay, maybe Prof is here. So when I'm talking, I need to be careful. I have been in that position where I write recommendation letters for people, right? For me, every recommendation letter is supposed to be tailored to the department you are applying to. Because if you use one generic, I mean, sorry for my choice of words, like people using Ashawo SOP and Ashawo recommendation letter. So that I mean that recommendation letter or SOP will be able to sleep with every institution that they come across with. How are you articulating to the one reviewing your application about how well your recommender even knows their department? Because when I was comparing my recommendation letters with the one my professors wrote for me to the other ones that I've seen people used it, I'm like, no, this one was actually written directly to the department. But if you use a more generic one, it becomes very difficult, right? Because people will not even mention the program. They will not mention they will not tie the research interest to the professors. Because my professors were writing, oh, first's research interest is in this. And even mentioned in the recommendation letter that he will be privileged to follow up with me under me being under the mentorship of this professor in that department. You see, so the dynamics are different. But then we will not be in the position to get all these things from all of our recommenders. So when you are writing, sometimes they will ask you, can you write something and bring it? You have to now take your time. Every instruction they've given you today, apply it and make sure all the components are in that recommendation letter. So that even if there's no institution mentioned on it or a program stated on it, it will be applicable to the other institutions that you are applying to.
Okay. All right, I'll move on to the next questions, two set of questions, which are asking about the same thing. So we are you're saying, and then Michael will say, what they are both saying is that their recommenders do not have institutional email. In the absence of that, can they use Gmail or non-institutional emails?
It's best. It's best if they have institutional emails, and it is best if they have departmental letterheads. It kind of gives some legitimacy to the whole thing and the seriousness with which they see give kind of a thing. So yeah, I've written a couple of this thing that I use department letterhead, especially most of the US schools will prefer letterhead. If it's for a medical school, it's strictly letterhead kind of all things, and the institutional email would help them to connect to the institution than a random email. It might not, I mean, it might not, the email may not say much, but the letterhead may say much kind of a thing. So, uh, I think, yeah, I wouldn't mind so much about the email, but the letterhead, they should have an institution's letterhead, which they should write from.
Okay. All right, then we have the last but one question. Elvis is asking, some schools require a writing sample. Can you use your whole undergraduate project work as that? Can soft copies of your published books also be used?
Hmm.
So he's basically asking, can he use,
No.
what he did for his undergrad as his SOP? And if he has a published book, can he use a soft copy of that
Can I
for
say
the
a big
purpose of
no to
writing?
that? Can I say a big no to that? I'm saying that I want to know how Prof will react to this, right? But see, when I was doing my applications, this is my approach. I look at the research interest of the professors that I'm trying to connect with them. Then I sat down because I wanted this to read 15 to 20 peer-reviewed journals, published works. Then through that, I came up with a writing sample, which was a literature review of those works. Funny enough, look at my other tricks. Is I see that Dr. Lamte is in department A in school A and has written something around that topic. I will cite him in that recommendation, and I'll make sure I cite him well in the writing. Professors want to see students who cite them. Oh, these students actually, imagine Dr. Lamte is reading my application document and he come across that, oh, Festus, this student actually cited me his recommendation letter. Oh, it means that the student has been following my works. You see, the undergraduate project work, I don't know, but I may be biased here. But my undergraduate project work thesis, whenever I pick it up, bro, I just burst into tears because I cannot use that for anything. It was just like, let's just pass the student for them to go through. Lots of errors, a lot of errors, bro. I can actually send you the link to go and download on ResearchGate. It's there. So I feel you cannot send that because that is almost like 50 pages, right? 50 pages, 40 pages. And writing samples, if you are applying for a doctoral level program, it should be around 20 to 25. That should be enough. So I feel if we are doing this in a more nice way, seeking good funding, why don't we sit down to write a very good and nicely well-written writing sample, which can be peer reviewed by someone in the field, and then use that one as your writing sample to upload to the schools, right? Because the 40 pages, 80 pages, I don't think Dr. Lamte, you have time to read all those 40 pages.
Oh no, no. No, yeah, I'm not going to. And most of the schools even give a limit that I've seen a 15 page, like make sure give the writing space of a maximum 15 page. I've seen the maximum 20 page. And yeah, unless you believe what you have is very, very good, it would be good as part of the writing process to kind of like write one along the line. And that's why you start early. But if what you did in school is very good, you could go for it if you believe.
Yeah, thank you, Doc. I see that Dr. Demavo, who is also here with us, thank you, Doc. You want to add a quick point? I don't know if we've gone past that or if it's still current. Of course, you're welcome to add what you wanted to add.
All right, thank you so much. So before I go to my point that I wanted to make, on the writing sample, I think like Dr. Limford Lamte said, you can use your writing your project because I think Linford and I used our project work at Legon, but we had to review it. We decided to revise it very well to make sure that it is fit enough to be considered a research paper. Because the writing sample, I think Cornelius might have said this earlier, it's to demonstrate your research ability, your research knowledge, how you can do research on your own. So if your project work did not have that component of it, then you don't have to use it. You need to go by what Festus suggested, And I know some people also, I guided them to uh, write something anew, something fresh, and it helped them, and they are here now. So my point that I really want to make is that in your communications with professors and also in your application letters or materials, do not present yourself as if you know it or as if you are someone who has acquired this, you have done this, you have done that. Do not boast too much. Present yourself as someone who can be trained, someone who is trainable. Because this one, I'm telling you, because it happened to a friend of mine, he did not listen to my advice, and the professor had to tell him that, in fact, we are looking for people whom we can train, not people who already have or know what it is that they want to come and study here. So please and please present yourself in a nice way. Okay, that's what I wanted to add.
Okay, thank you so much, Doc. So I was expecting this question, and I'm happy that someone has asked this question of AI. What are the risks of an AI-assisted SOP?
Uh,
Should you even use AI at all?
I would say do not use AI. I would say do not use AI because AI is very formulaic and it has a lot of assumptions that it could easily be seen. Like, I don't know the school's policy. Most of them are being very upfront with it and say do not use it. But 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 when it's evidence that you didn't write it yourself, and because we can see when we look at a work that is AI, we can see when we look at a work that it is easily Sometimes if you have not used AI, not done so much research in it, though it is recent, you might not see. You might see it's like I teach grant writing. When AI writes a perfect one, it might be even difficult to see that this is a grant writing paper written by AI. You can even make it have a human voice, but it is easily seen because there are a lot of things that repeat, and there are a lot of assumptions that takes away from your humanity, from your humanness of your individuality. And if you would have to revise this, it would take you months and weeks to revise all those things. So, first of all, just what are what are my the open spaces for you to use AI is to brainstorm. Brainstorm. I'm thinking about this. Could you give me ideas about this? But write the paper yourself. Write the paper yourself. Because when you write a paper, because now this is a very good question, and I'm glad to bring because now when we are looking at the materials. We don't look at it writing sample on its own as a writing sample. Now, you remember a faculty admission committee member will say, you said this in this material, but I didn't see it in the statement of purpose. And I didn't see it in the CV. It is not connected. So when AI writes it for you, you are going to, it's the whole thing, there should be some connection. There should be some relationship building around the material. The material is a whole, it's a holistic thing. They are not separate, though they are separate and they are not separate from each other. And when you begin to use AI, you will not be able to make all these connections kind of things. And you are for you to even think that AI has to write for you, you are just saying to the admission committee that you are not ready to use your thinking. And so just do not use that.
It's I think AI is hugely contested topic. So I don't know whether Cornelius and Edvistus have something to say about it.
I don't have anything to add, but I just have a question for the number of professors we have on board here that I think maybe would be beneficial to our audience. So during my application process for my PhD, I did something that a professor prompted my attention to. So most of the schools, when you're applying and you need to send in your recommendation letters, there's an element where you can have access to the recommendation letters or you will not have access to them. So when I was applying from Ghana, I made it okay. If my professors trust me enough to be a good student or a good fit for this particular program, there's no need for me wanting to see what they actually write about me. So I waived my ability to see what they wrote about me. But when I came here, I was curious. I was like, what actually did they write that I got? So I said, I'll not waive this time around. I'll actually like to see what they write about me. And funny enough, I was taking an assessment class in writing studies by that time. And the person that was one of my recommenders was also on the panel or the committee that would decide on who is coming in or who is not coming. And he advised me that even though it doesn't play a major part, it has a rhetorical impact in you as an individual. So you are kind of, you don't trust the person writing the recommendation letter. So I was wondering if it is institutionally specific or is something that admission committees take into consideration when students waive or decide not to waive the ability to read their recommendation letters at the end of the day. There was something very tricky about after that one, I decided to waive all the other letters, but there's something that he prompted my attention to.
Yeah. Look, this question is looking at your face.
Yeah. I, I, in my experience at the committee, I don't think we got to that point. But what I think is that it's more to the person recommending than to the committee members. So it's an individual stylistic, individual preferences. So depending on the relationship you have, they might have these questions because if I am writing one for you and I see that because I'll see if I'm writing for you, I'll see that you have not waived. You want to read what I am. I might be more blunt, and I mean, it might go or your way, might not go your way. Kind of, and sometimes it puts them on kind of like surveillance,
Okay.
like you are surveilling them. Some people can take it, but some other people too will feel like it. Like, why do they want to see what I? So it's an individual preference kind of thing, but it doesn't have so much to do with the admission committee. But the
Hmm.
people, right? Yeah. So if you look at the person you are writing a relationship with, how do they behave towards you? How do they take things personally for things? Would they be okay, you know, would they be okay to to know that I want to see word for word what they wrote for me?
Okay. Thank you
I
so
think
much.
I think if I can just add something, yeah,
Right.
sat on two admission committees and we had to take a vote on some candidates or some applicants, and that actually influenced a lot, because we wanted to know who has recommenders who actually wrote the recommendation letters from an independent mindset point of view versus someone who is writing it from dependent mindset point of view. Because even I know some of you might be also thinking about national interest waiver, and that is also something that works there too, because
Hmm.
independent recommenders, they have, like Cornelius said earlier, they have rhetorical effect. So I would say just try as much as possible to trust your recommenders. But I think Festus mentioned something earlier. Go to them with a draft of what you want them to write for you, right? So with that, at least you have a fair idea of what they're writing about you. So all my application letters, I waived my right to access it. And the professor who told you, Cornelius, I think the professor was kind of talking about what some professors or some committee members might pay more attention to when it comes to the point of making votes or taking votes on certain candidates, because we wanted 5 MA students and we had 10 students to choose from, right? And I was also I was just a PhD candidate at that time though, but I had to kind of argue with some of my professors on the committee, because I wanted someone who would come and join a program that I was working with at that time, because we needed someone. So yeah, it's very dicey. It doesn't go one way, it can go any way. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Hey,
Sam, can I add something to
sure,
what
sure.
Prof said? So I think with this question, I mean, I'm into admissions as well. So with this question, one thing we need to look at it is how is the school understanding it, right? How is the school understanding? Because sometimes we are thinking that, oh, is that question saying that I don't trust my recommender? But that is not the reason. In grad and in college admissions, if a student is waiving their right to access that document, it means that when they are enrolled in the school, that becomes part of their students' records and they can access it. That is what it means. So I'm trying to send a very short link here from Harvard Grad School website. I mean, you guys can read it. It gives context. And I'm adding what George Mason University also wrote with respect to that definition of waiving your right, so that you guys will read and then understand it more. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that last question was from Pius. Thank you for that question. And so this is where we'll end the session for tonight. I know we've gone beyond the time that we originally targeted. But I think that it's also still in the right direction, because for me, this has been a really insightful, webinar. I want to thank, first of all, the leadership of RDSG. Most of them are with us. Dr. Mavo is with us. Dr. Lamte, Cornelius himself is part of us. And Dr. Midiji, who has left because he had to attend to something. I thank you all of you, for making this webinar possible. And I thank everyone who was able to attend the session today. I hope that this has been really insightful for you. And just to add, again, all of this session was recorded, and so it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and say Rhetoric and Discourse Society of Ghana, you should find our channel. But I also send a follow-up email to provide you every link that you need to access the resources that has been shared as the webinar was going on. Talking of physicists, the resources that he shared, I think I saw that some of you were complaining that you didn't have access to it because the link was broken or something. So I'll collect all of that and then email it to you once the session ends, probably tomorrow or something, but you should expect it. And in terms of RDSG, we now have our Facebook page. And so I highly recommend, I posted the link to the page in the chat. So I highly recommend that you give us a follow, because that is where we'll share most of our future sessions and information and webinars and, academic events and all of that. And so I highly recommend that you give us a follow so that you can get to see our future events. And also, I would also highly recommend that if you are here today, you still keep in touch with our speakers for today. I'm sure Dr. Linford, Cornelius, and Festus. Festus is one person who I've been following personally on LinkedIn. He shares really great and exciting resources on LinkedIn. I'm aware of his own outlets that provides mentorship to people like you who are looking at pursuing graduate study in the US. I think, if I'm right, that would be the Ubuntu Rising Scholars. Festus, if I'm right, which I've been following. Right. You should definitely follow him on LinkedIn and other social media platform, and you really, really benefit from that. I have been a beneficiary of his own mentorship. He doesn't know, but I've been a I've been a beneficiary of his mentorship. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And this will be the end of tonight's session. Thank you everyone for joining, and have a great evening. Bye bye.
We can't copy the links that you people have shared to us.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. I will combine everything and then send it to them after the webinar in email. I have their emails. We actually collected their emails, so we send it as a bulk email to everyone who registered, even if we were not able to attend.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you too.